Hello again. Some people commenting here this morning seem to think that there should be no limit at all on free speech. I'm not so sure about that. I am, of course, strongly against any attempt to limit or restrict what is allowed to be said, but I also recognise that there must be legal penalties for some kinds of speech. The classic example was cited by Judge Oliver Wendell Holmes in America in 1919. He was involved in trying a case of sedition. He wrote that the most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man falsely shouting fire in a theatre and causing a panic. I think this is a reasonable view of the matter. Holmes was referring to the Italian Hall disaster in Michigan in 1913. A theatre had been hired for an event at Christmas Eve where many children were present. They were in the main families of striking miners, and there was a great deal of ill feeling about the strike at that time. Somebody disrupted the thing by shouting fire into the theatre, which caused a panic and a stampede, in the course of which 73 people were crushed to death. It's been described as the greatest mass murder in Michigan's history. Does anybody here honestly believe that free speech should cover that? Do they really think that the person that shouted fire and caused 73 people, including many children, to be killed, should simply be able to get away with it? That free speech protects him from the consequences of those 73 deaths? In a civilised society, I cannot be allowed to say things which are liable to cause needless injury or even death. Suppose that I'm part of an angry crowd and I urge them to attack members of some minority or even to string them up on lampposts. Should my right to free speech be protected in such a case? Or take the law on conspiracy, which exists in both Britain and the United States. If two people have a conversation and plan to commit a crime, whether robbing a bank or murdering somebody, then they are guilty of a crime, even if they don't act on what they talked about. Is that a violation of the right to free speech? The difficulty is, of course, that we all judge the matter differently, and this is where there is a serious problem in framing the law. In some countries, it is illegal to deny that the Holocaust took place. I regard this as a shocking example of the misuse of law, designed to prevent people asking questions about an episode in history, and I'd be horrified if somebody tried to bring in a law like that in Britain. Some people, though, think that denying the Holocaust is likely to lead to violence. Do people on this channel really believe that there should be a complete free-for-all and that nobody should ever be prosecuted for saying anything or urging the commission of any crime or act of violence? How many people on this channel actually agree with that proposition? It's sometimes we behave as though the idea of limiting free speech is a new one. It's not. There was a very good example in the English county of Yorkshire in 1903, which is getting on for 120 years ago. There was a couple living there called William and Emily Swan, and they didn't get on. They were always rowing. Emily Swan took up with a man called John Gallagher. He became her boyfriend. She had an affair with him. Matters reached a climax when Mr. Swan found out about the affair and he punched his wife, blacked her eye for her. John Gallagher went round the house and attacked William Swan, beating him to death. A neighbour testified that Emily Swan had been urging him on, shouting, "Give it to him, Johnny." Gallagher and Emily Swan were both convicted of murder and both hanged. Over 100 years ago, words alone which could lead to violence were already a crime which could lead to the gallows. I wonder if viewers think that encouraging somebody to carry out an attack on another person which results in murder should also fall into the category of free speech. This subject is a lot more complicated than it at first appears, And what we call free speech has always been hedged around with limitations if it could lead to violence or disorder. Seriously, where do people think the line should be drawn?